Hello everyone and welcome to the Wing Complex here at the Silverstone Grand Prix circuit for round 3 of the world's fastest gamer. We started off at the Silverstone Grand Prix circuit in our virtual world, then we had a little holiday at the Zandvoort circuit in Holland, but round 3 is at a shortened Silverstone Grand Prix circuit. The Silverstone International track will form the basis of this epic fight. Tonight, 5 virtual drivers could take one giant leap towards getting into the world's fastest gamer finals, which is a chance to become a works simulator driver for the McLaren Formula 1 team. The way they do that is 5 drivers from this week will go into the final next week. We've already had 2 rounds. The first weekend was at the Grand Prix circuit at Silverstone, where 5 went through. And then last week it was Zandvoort, where we've had another 5 finalists. This week we get up to 15 finalists, and then next week 5 wildcard entries alongside those 15 entries to fight for just 1 qualification place into the interview stage of the world's fastest gamer at the McLaren Technology Centre. It is one of the biggest prizes ever in esports, and there are plenty of rFactor 2 drivers out there in the world desperate to try and get through. First weekend was at Silverstone, the second weekend was in Zandvoort, Holland, and here are the highlights.
And now we go racing. Is everybody going to make their way through with this big banked turn at Tarzan? It looks very, very clean to me. No contact, no cars facing the wrong direction, and a good challenge from Stefanko. Tried to go around the outside, he didn't manage to make it stick. He wanted to get in front now because he doesn't want rFactor to scamper away. There, looks like he's really, really under pressure. And here comes Cheng Bolabashi to the inside of the chicane. Can he get a little bit later on the brakes? He's not close enough, and that was very, very close to contact. And Diego Silva has spun around. Silva was in the top 10.
Kevin Van Duren being right in the background. He's having to move up the inside into the chicane, side by side with Yumi Nisula, the fifth through the part of the S. They're side by side still. They've gone side by side pretty much all the way through the S bed, but it's Van Duren with the inside line through Kumo, turns him and says, "Cheers, Jimmy, that was relatively straightforward."
Here comes David Williams now to the inside of Tarzan, and Williams is going to take the apex quite nicely from Nisula. And here comes Bootaloo down the inside of Burns, like he's had to wait to the final Larry into the Tarzan hairpin, the first corner of the lap, but he's managed to make it stick. It was a great move. Absolutely faultless drive from Jeffrey Rietveld, who comes towards the line and takes the checkered flag here at Zandvoort, the round 2 rFactor winner.
Jeffrey Rietveld, then the second winner of our rFactor 2 competition. He actually did enter the first week, but was on holiday, so couldn't actually race. And it was Ruud van Buren who took victory there. Alongside me is Scott Woodwis. He's going to be joining me in the commentary box this evening, esport racing expert. Why have we got 2 Dutchmen winning both the races? Is there some massive Dutch fraternity going on?
Either that there's something in the water over in Holland that we haven't been told about. But no, I think they're very skilled. They're 2 sim racing names that I know from several leagues. They've done a lot of good things. I think also what was similarities between the pair of them in terms of how they won their races. They qualified towards the top of the times. They took pole position, and then they actually led from the front and actually took a light stuff flag victory quite convincingly. So when it comes to the final with these guys, I expect these 2 are going to be the top 2 fighting out for the lead. They had a pretty easy victory each, but I think together, probably not going to be as easy.
Presumably, it doesn't necessarily matter if you win or come 5th position. What matters is winning the final weekend, which is next weekend, on the Silverstone International Circuit. Up to that point, it's simply about qualification.
It is, but I think all these guys will want to try and win, but of course, for what's at stake, for pride and for bragging rights and for ego in some cases. So, because of course some sim races do have a little bit of ego in some cases, but at the end of the day, any sim race would be lying if they didn't want to win this competition, and to ultimately go through as P1 obviously has to be everyone's goal.
And we're not just seeing experts in iRacing, because if you're new to esports, there are plenty of different platforms where you can do your craft, whether it be Project 2 cars or whether it be iRacing. But we are focusing on rFactor 2 here for the next 2 weeks. And we are seeing drivers coming from different platforms and desperately trying to master rFactor 2 in a couple of weeks so that they can get into that top 20.
Yeah, there's drivers who've come through from iRacing, from Assetto course and from other different sims and games. And this is the point. For me, the world's fastest gamer is somebody who might be good on one sim overall and have a preferred one, but effectively can adapt themselves to go quickly in terms of other sims and get themselves towards the front.
And we're only seeing 20 per week, but actually we've had over 2,000 unique entrants into the time trial stage that gets you through into this live final each week. And the 20 fastest laps around the Silverstone International Circuit look a bit like this. Now, this is something you're used to seeing in sim racing, but we don't see this in the real world. It's a bit confusing, but super cool to be able to compare each lap time simultaneously like this.
It does, and a couple of things it shows is, one, just how close the times were. There was only about 0.2 of a second between the entire top 20, but at the same time it shows the differences in lines. So one line might work for one driver and give them an advantage at one corner, but then comes the next one and that driver may gain that time back towards, down towards Stowe here, and then again someone else will take advantage by finding the optimal line into Vale.
And is that a characteristic of this Silverstone International Circuit? Not many slow corners on the track?
No, it's pretty much 2 long straights with a couple of slow corners and a relatively high-speed corner mixed in at each end. So there's a couple of key corners. I mean, Vale is a tricky one to, of course, get yourself set up for the double apex at Club. But the one at Beckett's is more tricky because it's the run down the hand straight for me that's also quite key.
Right, so there were 20 cars in that picture. Those are the 20 that went into qualifying, but we've just had qualifying offline, and there's been all sorts of controversy already today.
Yes, we had one driver who unfortunately we've had to eject, I'm afraid, for reasons we won't get into because it's a little bit tricky.
Disqualification in racing, do we not?
Yeah, I was trying to be politically correct rather than just say he's been disqualified. But yes, it's been pretty intriguing. Times have been in qualifying about 0.2 off what they managed in the time trial qualifier. So pace is there, but again, as we said, being quick in qualifying is one thing. Being consistently quick over the race distance, that's a completely different kettle of fish.
So why has this driver been disqualified?
I believe it was some indiscretions on track and just the pace, we believe, wasn't towards the same as some of the front runners in some cases. So because of that, the race stewards took a decision to actually, unfortunately, remove him from the race. So we're going to have 19 drivers rather than the full 20. OK,
but we do not know as yet who will be in the top 5, because the top 5 qualifiers go into a super poll, and we are going to do the super poll in a few moments' time. So Scott, if you head over to our commentary booth, I'll be with you in just a few seconds' time. And if you would like to get in touch with us, there's Facebook, there's Twitter, there's Instagram, and we'll be talking to you throughout the whole of this hour-and-a-half session, qualifying first, then the race. And please interact with us, and we'll talk to some of you at the end of the racing and see just how you've enjoyed this 3rd round of the world's fastest gamer. Super Poll is up, and I better get to the commentary booth.
Hi, Dave. Sorry. So, the 5 drivers that have made it through to this Super Pole shootout are as follows. Top of the times in qualifying was Kevin Ryan from Ireland. Then it was Paolo Moya from Italy. Jaroslav Honzik was in 3rd. Honzik coming from the Czech Republic. Then Yuri Kasdorp of Holland, another Dutchman, and then the man that's heading out first now in 5th position, and it is all the way from Guernsey in the Channel Islands. It is David Williams, who will be our first official Super Pole qualifier here tonight, and he's someone who's no stranger to GTs. He's been an iRacing Block Pan Pro Series team champion, very much akin to this particular car, in fact, with the McLaren, of course, in iRacing. Now he has to tackle it in rFactor 2. He's on his outlap right now, and hopefully he can possibly deliver the goods. He was pretty quick in the times. He was 4th in the time trials, 1 minute .321 around this Silverstone International Circuit. And as he weaves his tyres from side to side, I think a lot of expectation, particularly because he is part of one of the biggest sim racing teams out there in VRS Coranda Simsport.
And this is very, very important to emphasise. This isn't really a game. This is a proper simulator, and therefore tyre temperatures are simulated. A very short lap at the Silverstone International, vital to get temperature in those tyres when we're only doing a 1-lap sprint.
Yeah, we just saw David Williams actually just lighting up the rear tyres, because of course rear tyre grip is just as important as front tyre grip to keep the traction, as Williams heads out to the second apex of Club Corner, up across the line, and he begins his flying lap here at Silverstone. He's on the mission for Super Pole.
Well, as I say, only one really big braking zone on this international circuit. If you're not familiar with it, this is the new section of turns, the link section, and at Village here, we actually go straight across to Beckett's. We don't go down to the old national section of turns, which makes this corner quite a fast turn, and it's also got a big bump in it as well. Actually, the most interesting turn on the lap is the link section, where we cut across from one side of the circuit to the next. More familiar with this bit, this is the Hanger Straight coming down towards Stowe. Another great overtaking opportunity if you muck up that link section. In the background, the next driver getting ready with his lap. This looks very tidy from David Williams, but not necessarily that fast.
Well, it doesn't have to. If it doesn't look tidy, usually if it looks quite clean and boring, it usually is quite fast. He did a 26.9 in the first sector, 17.8 in the second sector, so we'll see how it works out as we head down towards the final couple of corners. And the time is going to be, as he comes across the line, looks to be, it's going to be a 1 minute 1.427. That's about a second off what they managed in the qualifying session before the Super Pole. So obviously with an extra couple of laps of fuel, that's the difference. It makes about a second. But David Williams takes currently, of course, provisional pole. Next up is Holland's Yuri Kasdorp.
Yuri Kasdorp, one of the slowest qualifiers, in fact, from the time trial section of our world's fastest gamer that happened over the previous week. Qualification is actually open for the final 5 spots in the on the national circuit next week, so you'll be racing against the top gamers if you do qualify in the top 5, but a good opportunity for anybody who has perhaps had a bad week to get into that top 20 shootout, and the winner of that goes into the proper finals in November and the interview stage at the McLaren Technology Centre. Very interesting, actually hitting the limiter, Yuri Kasdorp, as he went down into Stowe Corner there. Forgot to change up, but was more concerned about perhaps getting some temperature into the tyres. I'd say he was the slowest qualifier. He wasn't that slow. He was only about 0.3 off.
Yep, as he heads out the final couple of corners, about a 10th up in the first section as he comes across the line, and reluctantly puts in 1 minute 1.083, so he goes top of the times by just over 0.3 of a second. Again, another tidy lap, but as we said, it doesn't have to look flamboyant to be actually be quick. In fact, actually, it's the opposite. If it looks oversteer, it's probably going to be slow.
Next car out on the circuit, then Jaroslav Honzik, who was a top runner last week at Zandvoort, and we have got half the field of returning drivers that we've already seen in the world's fastest gamer, whether it be in the first week around the Silverstone Grand Prix circuit or at Zandvoort last week. And Honzik was well up there, wasn't he?
He was a little bit. He was a little bit sort of down the order. If I look at my information here on my sheet, he was actually down 17th. It's a bit of a nightmare weekend for him at Zandvoort, but he's someone who has experience of real racing. He's been a Central European BMW 1 Series champion back in 2006, so he can race cars in real life as he heads through Stowe Corner. Looking at his sector times, he's done a 26.6 in the first sector, 17.7, so he's pretty good, about a 10th up on what Kasdorp managed in the second sector. Winds his way through Vale and through the second apex of Club as he comes towards the line. He's got 1 minute 1.083 to beat from Kasdorp. Can he do it?
Looked really good through the final corner. Is it going to be faster though to put him onto provisional pole? No, it's not. It's a 101.8. Sorry, 101.1. So it's into second.
And only a fraction behind as well, 0.25 a second. As we have our fourth guy, a big slide for Paolo Moya, the Italian, as he headed through Abbey Corner. That would have severely hampered his lap as he comes up through Farm and into the complex at Village. And then as he heads down, instead of turning completely left up through a loop, he goes through the link and then through what I feel is the most crucial part of this course, Beckett's corner, because the runoff here down to the Hangar Straight is oh so crucial. The traction and the momentum that you carry into the corner really sets you up for the run down towards Stowe.
But also it's a little bit downhill. It drops away from you. You've gone over a bump and then the circuit's dropping away. So really hard to get a decent balance from Paulo Moura. He was a retiree last week in Zandvoort, if I seem to remember. And so great to have him in the top 5 here. The first sector a 26.9, the second sector a 17.8. So he's there and thereabouts. It's very, very tight between Kasdorp and Honsnik at the top of the timesheet, 0.25 of a second. Where is Moura going to go? I suspect this is going to be 3rd or 4th position. Over the line, and it is 4th. He's 3.5 tenths back. Kevin Ryan was the fastest man in qualifying. Where will he go on the grid?
This is it then, onto his lap. He course fastest man coming into this weekend. He did a 1:259 in the time trial qualifiers. Then was about 2 tenths off that. Nice and tidy through Abbey and out through Farm into the braking zone into Village. Just tucks right. And now back on the power pretty early just as he comes after the apex. Then through the link. There's a big bump there, so he takes a lot of curb.
Yeah, he took a lot of curb, a lot more than we saw from the other drivers.
And now out of Beckett onto the Hangar Straight. A little bit of touch of grass on the exit, but that's okay. I think he'll get away with that. Onto the back straight. It is a 26.5. He's absolutely flying at that. That's one of the I think the fastest sector we've had in Superpole so far. Brings it up to the left-hand side of the circuit. Throws it into Stowe Corner. Back on the power pretty early. How much exit curb does he take? Just about enough, so he's well within track limits. Now to the final couple of corners. I have a feeling, unless I'm going to put the contest curse on him, he is possibly in line for provisional pole position.
Through the slowest corner, Vale, and now accelerating through Club. Loses the rear end, though, slides desperately wide, and that could have been enough to lose the pole position over the line to break the beam, and he does compete. He keeps pole position by 2 tenths of a second. An amazing performance from Kevin Ryan, because for sure that last sector was not as good as the rest.
No, it wasn't. Of course, he lost the rear end, of course, just off the first part of Club Corner, but he still managed to get it up there. It's about, as we said, half a second off what he managed in the actual qualifying session, further 7 tenths off in the time trial qualifiers. But Irishman Kevin Ryan doing it, of course, for the Emerald Isle. He will start the final qualifier before we get to the 3rd qualifier of World's Fastest Gamer from pole position, the only man in a sub 1 minute 1 lap time. Kevin Ryan tops the times in the 1:09. Then Yuri Kasdorp will start alongside him. Then Jaroslav Honzik, David Williams and Paulo Moya is your top 5 in the Super Pole for round 3 of the rFactor 2 qualifiers of McLaren's World's Fastest Gamer. So as Kevin Ryan brings his car back into pit lane, of course we'll have the rest of the grid as we'll go through when the race is about to start. But as he comes back into pit lane, I believe Ben has a couple of guests on the sofas talk about that Super Pole lap. Ben.
Once again, a very, very tight Super Pole session, as you'd expect. Miguel Fiesca, I got that wrong, didn't I?
Fiesca, yeah,
that wasn't too bad, is with us. Now, Miguel is the driver's steward on the rFactor 2 competition alongside Ed, who is our race director. Not so much for you to do in the Super Pole, because track limits seem to have been something that's been sorted, because here 2 weeks ago, everyone was running very wide at Stowe. Now they seem to have to behave a bit more.
Exactly, yeah. It was a non-problem at the first race, and we said we were going to take care of it. And then now it's all fixed. So if they run wide, the game will automatically do a penalty if you go on a qualification lap. The lap will not count. And during the race, if you do it more than 3 times, again, you'll have a drive-through penalty.
And I think that's the crucial thing about virtual gaming, is that actually it's far more consistent in terms of its regulations than we see in real racing, because the game sees you go over the white line and gives you an instant penalty. It doesn't rely on a marshal to see it, whether it be night or day, and then to report it, and he might have been having his coffee or looking elsewhere, and then some drivers get away with it, some drivers don't. Here, you just can't.
Exactly, yeah. Here, well, in real life, obviously some people use that to try to gain an advantage and maybe overtake on the next corner. In here, you cannot do that, because we might do it once, but you know, at the 3rd time, you're going to have a drive-through.
Silverstone International Circuit, a circuit that you know very well, both virtually and in real life. What is it like? I mean, is there many overtaking opportunities? It seems pretty fast to me.
It is quite fast. It is shorter, obviously, than the GP. It's roughly half of it. But I think we still can have quite a big. We can have some few overtakes. I think mainly into Stowe, into Village as well. So after the farm corner, those first two fast corners, probably going to see something there. So I think it could be a bit more interesting than Zandvoort.
But we have seen domination once again from the man who is fastest in the time trial, fastest in qualifying, and then bangs in a time 0.2 of a second better than anybody else.
It's still a very small gap, and you know when you go on the Super Pole, it's just one lap. If you do a tiny mistake, that can happen. So
well, we saw, and let's actually have a look at his lap, Kevin Ryan's lap here. We saw a mistake from him in the very last corner, but he still was just shy of 2/10 faster than anyone else. Oh, here we go.
Yeah, it did.
That's his mistake, is it not? I think.
I don't think you probably want to do that. I don't think you want to do that on the race. We still probably gain advantage on the rest. On the rest of the lap, and that didn't cost him too much.
Very difficult to get the tyres up to temperature on such a short lap. And we saw through Abbey the first turn, really had to correct the car as it's moving around underneath him. And again there.
Yeah, he did use quite a lot of curve there, but well, he still managed. But if you use that curve, he will unsettle a lot of cars, so it's a bit of a compromise that he has to do. In real life, I wouldn't do it, but
that would really damage the car in real life. Would it damage the car here?
Yeah, I think in here, I'm not sure if you will do damage, but on real life, probably you can do it a few times. But if it's going for even a sprint race, if you're constantly doing it, you'll have some damage on the car.
So if we see any cars coming into the pit lane, that is because they've exceeded track limits and they've got a penalty. That's kind of an automatic thing, right?
Yes. If the race director says that, for example, somebody had a danger overtake or had contact or provoked contact, that will be other situation. But and you might have a drive-through, you might have a stop and go. It depends on the severity of the incident. But the game will automatically put a drive-through penalty if you exceed track limits a certain amount of times.
So if there's contact, it's you. If there's track limits, it's the computer. Well, we are getting very, very close to the start of our 30-minute race. It's going to be about 30 laps. Myself and Scott Woodwis will be guiding you through. It's going to be incredibly exciting. This is rFactor 2 platform, round 3, to establish the next 5 that go through to next week's grand final. Can't wait.
So the race session has now progressed and we are now getting ourselves set up for another 30 minutes of McLaren 650 GS GT3 action here at the Silverstone International Circuit as the cars will start to form up on the grid, and we'll give you the grid in just a moment's time. But this is going to be pretty crucial again, as we said earlier on, Ben, where we separate the hot lappers from the actual racers, the guys who can put in those hot laps consistently over a race period rather than just putting in one single flying lap over a qualifying lap.
Well, there's a couple of surprises here. Miguel Ballesta in 11th position. He was a man that qualified on the front row of the grid in the Grand Prix race 2 weeks ago. He got disqualified after various misdemeanors. Didn't qualify from Zandvoort. Surely we expected him further up than 11th.
Yes, potentially. And let's see how he goes. Of course, his race pace should be pretty clean if he can make it happen. So
okay, this is a false start. Now we need to restart the
heading
session.
Through. We've just been told they're going to have to give a restart for reasons that we are not clear on. But they're going to have to give a quick restart of the start procedure. So we'll have to try and talk through. But we'll try if we can to figure out what's going on and give you the grid in a moment's time.
Well, that's technical issues in normal racing, technical issues in virtual racing. It can happen to anybody. It gives an opportunity, because we can actually see the grid without it moving around, to run through it. We know Kevin Ryan's on the pole, Yuri Kasdorp alongside him on the front row, which is, for me, is a surprise, because he was well down in qualifying. But on the front row of the grid, Hosnick and Williams on row 2, Mura, and then in 6th position is Olli Paukala.
Yeah, Olli Paukala, who is someone who's part of the infamous Team Redline fold. And of course, if anyone knows sim racing, Team Redline has 2 very esteemed sim racers. And of course, those 2 drivers are also part of our 5 superstar sim racers, and that being Bono Huys and the legend that is Gregor Hooter. Of course, Bono's a legend as well, of course. He wouldn't be in the top 5 if he wasn't. But of course, Olli Paukala has raced with them, and he's been a race winner as well and been one of the top drivers in the iRacing World Championship Grand Prix Series. He knows what he's doing, but of course, he's having to transfer his pace from a McLaren single-seater in iRacing to a McLaren GT car in rFactor 2, and so far doing quite well.
Miguel Melos alongside him in 7th position is a man that we would we have seen in the first 2 rounds. Probably expect him to be a bit further up than 7th position, wouldn't we?
Possibly. I mean, looking at his previous results, he was 12th in the first race at Silverstone GP, and at Zandvoort he was 15th, so bit tricky. But now, of course, some of the faster guys, if you like, from the first 2 rounds have now progressed or aren't available to be here tonight. He's up there in 7th, and hopefully we'll try and make the most of it.
Daniel Brewer from London in the UK, Jan van der Heide in 9th spot, running as part of the team that we saw have such success in Zandvoort last week.
Now.
But he's German rather than Dutch. He sounds Dutch to me. He's in 9th spot. Again, another man we'd expect to see further up, or is he one of the lower of that team?
Oh, possibly. I mean, he's a bit of an unknown, of course. I think he was picked up, purely because he did pretty well. I think he was inside the top 100 of the first qualifiers, and because of that, the team said, you know what, we're going to pick you up and make you a team driver. So there you go. Even if you don't make it towards the finals, you can still find sim racing teams to go and race with off the back of good performances in these qualifying time trials before these races. So I think he's only probably just recently become an Avid Chronic driver, and that's the reason why he's running the distinctive black and white livery with Avid Chronic emblazoned on the door.
Jimmy Nussler was another man that we saw last week, along with Kirill Burkov. Now, Burkov was someone, he qualified last week, and he's pretty well down this week as well. But Jimmy Nussler, we had high hopes for last week, didn't do anything, and again, kind of mid-pack here.
Yeah, we finished 13th in the first race, but he's now a little bit higher up inside the top 10 as he come through. In fact, we just spotted that the order's changed a little bit, because we thought Olli Paukala was in 6th, but he's actually now tumbled down the order to 14th. So
yeah, so I think that was one of the resets, that they were trying to get the grid in the correct order. So now it is in the correct order, and Paukala is on row 7, which is a long way down for him.
It is. So just to correct that, of course, it's now Miguel Morelos who's now 6th, then it's Miguel Ballester, then a man who's no stranger also, Peter Burlak, who is starting on row 4 alongside Miguel Ballester, and he's somebody who's had experience in FSI. He's done the Visa Vegas E-Race as well, and of course he's raced in GPWC in the Formula Challenge Championship. He was champion in that as well, and he's someone else who we know is pretty quick, but I guess race pace wise he's sort of fallen back a little bit, so hopefully he's expecting more tonight.
This is a rolling start. It caught Miguel Ballester out, and it caught me out on the first round. Miguel Ballester, interestingly, couldn't understand the language that was being used by our race director in the first round. Brought a friend in from a different country, I think it was Czech Republic, to sit alongside him to translate all the English that was and the instructions, so he had a better chance in Zandvoort. Wonder whether he's got his translator this week. On row 4, a great opportunity to get onto the top 5.
Yeah, but quick look at the rest of the grid then very quickly. It should be Ballester, Nisa, then Chiappini, Pea Peeves in there, Diogo Silva, Michael Francesconi, and also Zbigniew Ciara and Daniel Brewer towards the back of the field. We've got 19 cars, Ben, and we're about to go racing for round 3 here at Silverstone International.
Very, very neat as they head towards the start-finishing line, waiting for the green flag to fly. And the race director says, let's go racing then. And very, very good start from Kevin Ryan, who's in the grey car on the outside. But I think... yeah, there's contact in the mid-pack. We've got 2 cars going round, plenty of contact. Oh, we're going to lose many, many cars there. 5 or 6 facing the wrong direction as we... who have we got there then? Well,
Nisler's out of it. Also, Balesta's involved. I think Van der Heide is in there as well. We've got a missing rear wing for Eros Masculi. Olli Paukala's caught up in that as well, as is Francesconi. So 2 of the Pescara sim racing drivers already hitting strive. They're going to have to hit to the pits. But up towards the front, I think it's Kevin Ryan that leads it from, looks to be, I think, and there's more cars. Someone spun at the back, and one of the Pescara cars has gone for a spin. I think that was possibly Masculi again. It was Francesconi, I think, towards the back of the field. So drama on the first lap, which we didn't see in the first two races, but already a very frantic start here at Silverstone.
It was always going to be when that corner is effectively flat out on the first lap and people squeezing each other and so much contact. We're going to see a lot of DNFs, I think, at the end of this lap. What a shame for some of those guys, especially someone like Ballester, who's been trying for 3 weeks to get in, and now he's going to be the top 5 for next week just to have a chance to qualify. He's kind of taken to my heart a little bit because he's had such a rough ride of things. Kevin Ryan leads, Kasdorp in second. I thought he was going to stick his nose up the inside into turn 1, but he decided against it. Then it's Jaroslav Honzik with David Williams in 4th, Miguel Merlos in 5th position, and then just outside the top 5 is David Cipriani, and he's got the best opportunity at the moment to get into that top 5. Diego Silva behind him, Peo Pive in 8th, Daniel Brewer dropped to 9th, Peter Berluck dropped to 10th position.
He has, up towards Stowe for the second time, Ryan holding the advantage. And one thing to remember is guys like Kevin Ryan, Yuri Kasdorp, and also including there David Williams as well. They're all drivers that have raced effectively over at Sim Racing Club in the Virtual Endurance Championship in either GTs or LMP1. So they know race pace, they know how to be quick and consistent over a stint. Of course, they're going to have to do it for half an hour. And these cars will be no strange to them either, because of course these are GT3 cars, much akin to GT cars that have driven in. As unfortunately, the two Pescara cars that were involved, Masculi and Francesconi, and also in there Miguel Ballester, still in the pits getting repairs as we head on to lap 3 here at Silverstone.
And sadly, a bit of a gap then behind Peter Berluck, Berjac in 10th position, just simply because of the frantic nature in that first corner, kind of scrambled the second half of the field. In the pits, Jimmy Nussler is the first of the drivers. We've lost 4 drivers that have stayed in the pit lane, and that is Nussler, Pacala, Masculini and Ballester. Ballester's already DNF'd and come out of the race. So huge disappointment for Ballester, and he's going to have to try again. 4 cars lost, and now just 14 runners, the smallest pack we've seen in the whole of this competition so far, because actually we only had a couple of DNFs per race, and we certainly didn't have an accident like that. No, stay tuned for the end of the race where we'll dissect it all.
Yep, very true. It's been a little bit of a more frantic start to this race than we have the first 2. Of course, it has been a bit more side by side and sort of just rubbing panels rather than full-on contact. I think Ollie Pacala is also in the pits as well. He was an M I wasn't expecting to be out, as Francesconi comes back on track just in front of the leaders. He's a couple of laps down and very wisely getting out of the way not to get involved too much with what's happening with the front runners.
Drive-through penalty for Williams.
And we've got a drive-through penalty for David Williams in 4th position. So David Williams, who was running up there, his chances of getting through now have just been absolutely shattered, because I think maybe some contact into turn 1, I think. So because of that, he is now on the drive-through penalty, and he'll be going straight to pit road to serve that one straight away.
So David Williams in 4th position.
To serve that one straight away.
So David Williams in 4th position, and he will drop out of that and allow Miguel Merlos up into 4th, and David Cipriani into 5th position and into a qualifying position. Very significant. I don't think we're going to see David Williams continue in the race. That's actually being significant. I don't think we're going to see David Williams continue in the race after that. He's actually being challenged quite heavily by Miguel Merlos at the moment. That McLaren orange machine has been looking very racy. The car has been twitching around, certainly into the linked section of turns, and he's certainly got the pace to overhaul Williams. Out further. Moment Williams stays out. Further back there is a battle going into the first turn, and that's Pive and Brewer.
Yep, that's over P8 as they head through Abbey and up through Farm. So Pive in the dark blue car is ahead of Brewer in the dark red car up towards the complex at the village. Turn their way through the right hand, avoiding the curb. Instead of turning left onto the Grand Prix circuit, they do go through the avoiding the curb. Instead of turning left onto the Grand Prix circuit, they do go left, but through the link and up towards the Beckett. So very important corner as it swings through back onto the hanger straight. And so far, Piva's got the initial advantage over Brewer at this point in time. And also look behind them because Peter Burlack in the point in time. And also look behind them because Peter Burlack in the light blue car in 10th position. He's lurking in the background, but again, he's quite a bit off the pace than I expected, of course. It just shows possibly he's better over one lap and potentially over a race distance.
Yeah, we've been bigging up Peter Burlack since the very beginning of this competition. He's yet to really show form. Bigging up Peter Burlack since the very beginning of this competition, and he's yet to really show his form. Let's go on board with him then and stare at the back of Brewer, see what kind of inputs are going on both from the Brewer car ahead and also from Burlack at the steering wheel. Is he doing too much with it? We on the in the last two in the last 2 weeks, which has kind of made the physics of the car look a little bit more realistic. The first week we were basically using far too much lock. Next couple of weeks, they're having to set the car up much more like they would if it was a real car.
And that's pretty key. That's the feedback with the car feels. What that sort of feedback and ability to adapt to how a car feels is exactly what McLaren are going to want to look for when they're looking for their simulator driver for their F1 team. Of course, the driver who is the lucky person to win that year's paid contract as the official in-house simulator driver for McLaren F1 team. So, grip, physics, how feel the differences in grip, in physics, in how the car works in certain conditions. That's going to be a key point, and giving that crucial bit of feedback, which is something that McLaren legend Ayrton Senna was always
on the right-hand side of the start-finishing line, just getting out the way of everyone.
Yep.
Now dropping a lap down, and really probably would call it quits if I was him. Points being one lap down in only a 30-minute race, but either way, doing a good job of getting out the way of the leading contenders. A charismatic chap, let's say, and probably a little bit disappointed, Scott, not to be shortlisted alongside his teammates Bono Hughes. Is he not of the similar level?
No, I would say he's definitely a fantastic driver. Just I think it's in terms of, I think the selection process was in terms of what they may have achieved and sort of a level at which they've competed at over a certain period of time. And Pakala is a fantastic driver, but I think that Huis and Hutu are equally as good, but I think they've obviously competed at the highest levels of sim racing in a longer period of time, and they've probably achieved more in that period of time so far than Pakala has. It's not to say Pakala will never achieve any of that. Of course, every sim racer has the potential to reach those sort of levels if they work hard enough and are that quick. But Pakala, of course, is in a position where he can learn from these guys and get better and better, and he does so every time he races in the iRacing World Championship Grand Prix Series. So he's definitely not a slow driver. He's definitely not at all. He's been a race winner, and he does an incredibly good job working for one of the best teams in sim racing. But of course, at the moment, it seems as though more preferring to iRacing than he is possibly rFactor 2. But so far, it seems as though that Huis and Hutu so far seems to be on that slightly higher level when it comes to achievement and possibly even pace.
You may remember, if you are a follower of certain celebrated e-races, that Olli Pakala was the kind of winner of the Vegas e-race before he was then disqualified for having a car that was clearly faster than everybody else.
And then he ended up in third in the results, of course, and the winner of that race was a certain Bono Huis. So that second, I'm pretty sure I'm confident. I think it was possibly Felix Rosenqvist, I think, was second place in that race. So showing not only is he impressive, of course, in Formula E, but of course he was impressive as well at the wheel of a sim race. So doing pretty well indeed.
And what was remarkable about Felix is that when he was asked whether he does this on a regular basis, he said no. So he just jumped at it and was able to be fast, which is basically what he's done in, I think he said to me, in last year he drove 12 different categories in race situations. which is quite remarkable. Not many people do that, and you can kind of do that in the sim racing world, can't you? Because we have touring cars, we have GT cars, we have Formula 1 cars, and we have endurance car, different specs of races.
Absolutely, and of course it's a good chance for you to kind of adapt and kind of work with different things. Of course, if you can sort of be a bit of a sim racing all-rounder in terms of categories, if you can be good in single-seaters, but then again you can dabble into GTs, you can dabble into prototypes, you can also even dabble into touring cars, and of course there's other disciplines, of course, including, you know, rallying and drifting and all sorts of stuff. If you can sort of adapt yourself and be quick in those different disciplines, that really sets you out as an all-rounder in terms of you can basically throw yourself into any car in any sim, find the base setup, get used to the physics and how it feels, and we pretty much just be there on the pace pretty quick in a relatively short time. So if you can do that, that's quite an advantage, of course, particularly if you're looking to try and reach the higher echelons of sim racing and indeed esports.
I want to have a quick look at P7, which is Peo Piv from Bulgaria, and break it down a little bit for those people who are watching who may not really know what they're watching at the moment. If you're watching perhaps on the McLaren Facebook page and your usual news feed of Formula 1 related goods is now being replaced with virtual racing. We've got, 13 different nationalities in this race, racing from their hometowns, their bedrooms, perhaps their offices, joining in a... Actually, Scott, you explain, because you'll be able to be more articulate about this. How do they get to the point of all racing on the same virtual track?
Effectively, everyone joins a server, effectively, so it's an online server. So it's a little bit like, for example, if you and I were to kind of like join a chat room, for example, you've got people from all around the world in the same chat room. Think of it as a similar way as just seeing Brewer going up the inside, having a look at P into Stowe corner. P goes a little bit wide as he runs a little wide onto the exit of the corner. They're now going to go side by side. I'll finish my point in a minute, because also here comes Peter Burlack to try and make it 3 wide. It's now side by side into Vale. Peeve has the inside line. Brewer will try and fight back if he can. A little bit of a nudge on the right rear corner as they come out of it. And also look at the back of the train, because here comes David Williams. As also we've now got Zbigniew Ziara trying to get past Peter Burlack, and Williams will try and throw himself into the mix as well. He's going to try and get himself possibly up towards the front of the top 10 as he disappears off my screen for a second, but comes back through as now Ziara now heads through, and I think it's just me, but Williams seems to have completely disappeared.
Yes, he did.
So, not sure what that was all about. At show on my screen, he's been disqualified, but for reasons that we know not, unfortunately. So, wish we could tell you more, but David Williams has been disqualified. So if we can get some clarification possibly from the race director or somebody as to why he's been disqualified. He served his drive-through penalty, so what that was for, I'm absolutely lost for words. But anyway, going back to the point I was trying to finish.
Yeah, because it was actually status quo by the end.
It was, yes. It's stayed as it was. But effectively, everyone sort of joins a server, and it could be, as long as all the connection's stable, everyone will race either predominantly with the wheel and pedals and a good enough sort of computer system. Then we'll all join up in the same server at the same time. It's basically like everyone joining up to, go to a race meeting here at Silverstone in one of the club meetings like BRSEC or 750 Motor Club or BARC. They'll join up in the same place, but it's in the same server. So effectively, it's like a virtual race meeting. Everyone gets into the same place together, and they all basically race for the same reason, which is, of course, to try and win the race and beat everybody else.
We're hearing from Race Control that was actually a drive-through penalty. When he took his drive-through penalty, he was speeding in the pit lane, and presumably that's an automatic computer-generated penalty that's disqualified him.
So that's a shame, because that means David Williams will have to come back and put himself into the top 5 for the Silverstone National Qualifier, and it shouldn't be too difficult, I'd hope, because he was 4th fastest in this qualifier, and only about 0.62 of a second off the fastest time set by Kevin Ryan. As we look in front, Daniel Brewer coming under attack yet again from Peter Burlack as he looks to the outside at Stowe, tries to look for the cutback on the inside, goes over the curb as in his failed efforts. This now puts Zbigniew Ziara looking up the inside now. Burlack's under real pressure here into Vale. But Burlack will hold the outside line. He's got the inside for Club, but Ziara's not going to give this one up too easily. And just staying as they were, a little twitch of oversteer from Burlack, but the Czech driver is really under pressure.
And I think Burlack has also disappeared there. Where did Burlack go?
Potentially, yes, he has. He has disappeared somewhere. So they're dropping like flies pretty quickly here in this third race of the world's fastest game of qualifiers. Meanwhile, back up at the front, we've got Kevin Ryan, who continues to lead. The gap at the front between himself and Yuri Kasdorp is now just only 0.7 of a second, so Kasdorp is just keeping him honest there. In fact, the last lap he set looks as though Kasdorp was 0.3 of a second quicker than Ryan, so possibly, is that Ryan starting to feel the pressure here, and possibly Kasdorp starting to find the groove?
Something happened with Peter Burlack there, because he DNF'd as he was still running on the exits of the last turn, so just pinged and disappeared. And that's unusual. These sim drivers tend to be very well behaved, pull off the circuit, stop the car, and then they escape out of the game. So very strange to see him just disappear like that.
Yeah, it's a shame as well, because of course Berlak, again, he's another driver who will have to come back next week and put in that time to get himself into the top 5 to try again.
Back to Peeve and Brewer. They are absolutely locked together through the first turn, and now they head towards the link section and village, and Brewer with less than a car's length on the back of Peeve. Peeve is the cork that needs to be popped, I think, to allow these guys to start progressing towards the top 5. It doesn't matter where you finish as long as you're in the top 5, and for the moment Brewer and Peeve are not. They don't have to worry now about Berlak, who's disappeared potentially because he lost connection, we're hearing from race control. So, you know, that's Wi-Fi for you, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, ideally these guys would use an Ethernet cable, but of course Wi-Fi may be the only option for some people. Now, just looking back to the front, because Kasdorp is still applying the pressure here to Kevin Ryan. Now, the gap the last time we came through the split was under half a second. If we come across the line, it looks a little bit closer than that. The gap is now 0.3 of a second, so Kasdorp is on the warpath now as they charge through Abbey Corner. Kevin Ryan not looking so relaxed now, because he's got now the white, black and orange car just behind Yuri Kasdorp, as I think Kasdorp was a little bit wayward through Farm Corner into the complex of the village, and then of course the kink, or the link I should say, and also this is now going to bring Jaroslav Honzik into play as well. Honzik, of course, who has been a real-life champion way back in 2006 in the Central European BMW 1 Series Championship, so he knows how to handle it as well, but he's also somebody who has handled sim racing at an endurance level as well.
Let's stay as we watch the cars coming down towards Stowe and flick through, because in the background the second group of 3 cars are very, very close, with Merlos and Cipriani locked together, and if anything happens between those two, Diogo Silva, who is in 6th and not qualifying, will be very happy to pounce and get into the top 5. That's really what matters. Kevin Ryan and Kasdorp can fight for honours and for pride and for bragging rights on the forums for the next week, but to be honest, they're both through. Yeah. Silva is not. Cipriani in 5th position is. So if we watch that little group, that's far more crucial for the results of this race.
Yeah, these guys are effectively on the bubble. They know effectively that 5th position that Chiappini currently holds, that effectively is the money place vector. That's the one that will get you that last crucial automatic qualifying spot for next week's final. So that's going to be a crucial one indeed. And Chiappini, again, he could stay behind in 5th position, but of course, again, sim racers have some kind of an ego, and they all want to try and make a pass. So I'm sure at some point he will try and line him up. He's got a good slipstream on Morelish with the exit out of Beckett. Possibly could be lining him up here, but again, a small part with Brady was saying, no, Davide, stay set back for a second. Just try and defend from Diogo behind and just stay where you are. 5th position is enough. If you stay here for the next just under 12 minutes, you are through.
Scott, I got told off by the race director.
Why did you get told off?
I got told Wi-Fi is not allowed. You're not allowed to connect on a Wi-Fi connection.
Oh dear.
So
that's somebody told them.
Yeah, flag for Ben.
Yes. Anyway, Kevin Ryan then continues to lead by almost a second from Yuri Kasdorp in 2nd place, and that's a similar gap of 9/10 to Honzik. So the top 3 now pretty much a little bit spread out in that last lap. They sort of gapped each other a little bit more. So there's, let's say, roughly about sort of a second between each gap then. Then there's a further 5 seconds back to the next trio of cars, headed of course by Morelish, with a very racy Davide Chiappini holding up honours for the Pescara Racing team, and then Diogo Silva in the bright pink car in 6th position. Of course, he is in the balance as well. If he can try and get close and take advantage of any mistake from either Morelish or from Chiappini, he can pounce and get that final crucial qualifying spot for next week.
We've got a couple of guys in this top 5 that we've not actually seen in the top 20 qualifiers in the first 2 weeks, so it's quite impressive performances when we've got half the grid filled with people who have already been in the top 20 and done one of these races before. But Kasdorp, for instance, it's his first time, yet another Dutchman, trying to take another win. Ryan, I think we have seen Ryan, haven't we? We saw Ryan in the first week.
Yeah, he was in round 1. I think he finished, if I remember correctly, if my sheet tells me, finished in the top 10. So he was roughly there or thereabouts on pace.
And the other man is David Chiappini. We were wondering whether he was Indian or Italian. Definitely Italian.
Yep, definitely Italian.
But
and
he didn't race in the first 2 weeks, did he?
He didn't. He's a new man for week 3. He's basically been racing in the Italian SRZ League. He's been making single-seaters, doing, of course, up the single-seater ladder, if you like. F4, then F3, then F2, and then effectively Formula 1 Grand Prix style racing. And been a race winner in there. He's won titles there also as well. So he's pretty prominent in Italian sim racing circles, and also showing it that's mainly in single-seaters. And again, adapting well, of course, to the GT style of racing at rFactor 2, and holding that final qualifying spot, which we keep on saying, it's a very very valid point, is oh so crucial to get it into that automatic qualifying spot.
What I love about this is that we've got about 4 different groups of cars. Nobody's being able to run on their own. It's almost like a Formula Ford race, and the slipstream is really taking effect.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, we've got this next quartet that's going on, battling over 7th place downwards. We've got Peo Pif with Daniel Brewer, then we've got Zbigniew Ziara and Paulo Moya, who's one of the guys you expected to be right up there, but struggling in this race. I think he got caught up in the turn 1 antics coming into Abbey Corner. He's now struggling at the back of that train in P10 at the moment. And all there's more shenanigans behind, because we've now got a battle between Jan van der Heide, and also we've got the Kirill Birukov coming through the complex at Vale and Club. They were side by side making a tiny bit of contact as they come into Abbey Corner again. This is on lap 22. So we're getting towards the end of the race now, the last few laps now, as Birukov holds on. I want to try and get a replay of that for kind of my screen as to what was going on. And let's have a look, see if I can quickly have a look for a moment. And what went on between the pair? They were side by side. Well, Birukov actually went up the inside through Stowe, up towards where they kept on side by side. And they just made a little bit of contact as Van der Heide went over the curb, but they managed to pretty much get out of it almost relatively unscathed and almost got a little bit of oversteer in tandem.
And going into Stowe then, it's still side by side. Birukov on the inside, Van der Heide on the outside. Little bit of an overlap, but doesn't manage to find a way past. They both run super, super wide. And there are 2 cars behind that want to play in this one. Jimmy Nussler being one. Lovely livery on that blue with the Finnish flag on the roof. And Birukov holds on just. Olli Palkala is kind of watching. He's had his rear wing refixed onto that car after having contact in the first corner. But he's, I think, a lap down. I'm not sure our graphic shows that. He's not a lap down. He let everyone pass, so he must be a lap down. Either way, Nussler isn't a lap down, and he could pounce and take up positions here.
Yeah, potentially. So just looking back to that gap that was battling our way over 7th place. And Daniel Brewer has managed to make the move on Peo Pif whilst we're looking at that. So Peo Pif is now down to 8th position, and he's now under pressure from both Zbigniew Ziara and also Paulo Moya now as they head down up towards Stowe Corner again. This is on lap 23 here at Silverstone International. Moya has a look up the inside potentially, but has to really stand on the anchors to avoid hitting the back of Ciara's car. Little twitch of oversteer from Zbigniew's machine as he heads up towards Vale. Now I'll move up the inside from Peo Pif as he looks in contact with Daniel Brewer. They all get involved. Moya's in the back of Pif, and it's all going into one big carambolage as the next group of cars comes through. Pif gets himself back going again, but Brewer possibly stranded in the gravel and possibly out of the race, maybe even with a stalled engine. He's not moving anywhere. That's his race done and dusted.
Now, Race Control have talked about virtual safety cars before. We haven't actually seen one yet, but they were threatening to do so. And with Daniel Brewer's car in that position, could that bring a virtual safety car out? It wouldn't actually do anything to the positions on circuit because it's a virtual safety car. Everyone just slows down unless they break rules. And talking of breaking rules, Race Control telling us that Muir and Brewer got cuts last lap and therefore potentially could have had drive-through penalties coming into that lap. So maybe that was a last gasp attempt and they knew that they were out of it anyway. Either way, his car's no longer there. Brewer has DNF'd and quit the game.
So back towards our leaders for the record then. The gap is 1.1 seconds between Kevin Ryan and Yuri Kastorp at the front. Then it's Jaroslav Honzik holding station in 3rd. We still keep on looking at this battle of a 4th that's going on between Moreles, Chiappini and Silva over 4th, 5th and 6th. Of course, 2 of these guys will be automatic qualifiers for next week. One of them won't. At the moment, it's Silva who's in the unlucky position right now, but he has to try and find a way through, and he seems to be looking at the lap times compared with all 3 of them. Looks to me as though I think it's pretty equal on lap time. I think Moreles was 0.3 quicker on the last lap than Chiappini, and Silva's time didn't really come up on the screen as being registered properly. So Ziara now is holding station in a very lonely 7th place after that contact, and Peo Pif, looking back at 8th, has now got some more friends to play with because he's now got Birukov, Van der Heide, and also Paulo Moy's been in the pit lane as well. So Nussler's also not too far away either. I think Nussler and Pakala are a couple of laps down each. Yeah,
2 laps down according to Race Control, so our timing screen, I think, probably says it somewhere, but I can't really work it out. And other news is that Paulo Moura did come into the pits to serve a drive-through penalty. So having had that contact, he's now had a further problem by coming into the pit, so he's well out of it. So we really should focus with 5 minutes remaining on the battle for the lead, and plenty of battling throughout the field. Lots of entertaining battling, far more than we've seen in previous races. But really, the top 5 are the cars that matter, and the top 3 are still locked together. Kevin Ryan, Kasdorp and Honzik just have 2 seconds between the three of them. Then a big gap, so they don't have to worry too much about the guys behind. To 4th position, Miguel Melos, who's driving a very loose McLaren. The 650S under his seat is moving around a lot, and I think he may have cooked his tyres. That's the kind of thing that's going to happen now in these last 5 minutes. The tyres are going to be wearing out, and they are going to feel that as a driver, and they are going to have to try and drive round that problem.
Yeah, that's very true. And of course, now we're looking at the leaders again. It seems to be just back and forth, sort of punch and counter punch between these 3 drivers, because of course the gap goes out, but it comes back down again, because the gap is there underneath the second once again. Between, it's now 0.7 of a second now. So Kasdorp then with a last-minute charge. Now we're inside the last 4.5 minutes, possibly. Has Kevin Ryan got this sorted, or is Kasdorp going to go for glory and the bragging rights? Of course, now common sense would dictate that he stays in second place, but again, in some cases, you know, you try and tell team racers to have common sense, they'll probably laugh at you and carry on anyway. So as they come into Beckett's onto the hangar straight once again, this is on lap 27 of this 3rd round of the rFactor 2 qualifiers for McLaren's world's fastest gamer. Kevin Ryan leads, then still from Yuri Kasdorp, and then for Honzik Solon Station in 3rd. But the battle of 4th, 5th and 6th, that has to be the crucial one. Morales holds it, Chiappini's in that final qualifying spot, and Silva still on the prowl, but falling away in 6th position.
And Diogo Silva is a man that we've already seen try to qualify into the top 5 in previous weeks and has failed, and he'll be desperately kicking himself if he finishes this race in 6th position as well, especially behind a man who simply has come in for his 1st week and already in the top 5.
Yeah, and that just shows the quality of some of the sim racers that can come in and do a good enough job on that side. Looking at the lap times, you couldn't have had it more equal, because everyone in the top 3, Ryan, Kasdorp and Honzik, all punched in 1 minute 1.6 lap times. The man that was quickest out of all 3 of them, fractionally, was Kevin Ryan, 1 minute 1.651, then a 0.692 for Kasdorp, 0.682. There was 100th of a second better on that lap. So the top 3, not to put the commentator's curse, it looks pretty static with 3 minutes to go. But as we head on to the last few laps here, still that battle for 4th is the one we have to look at. Morales and Chiappini are in that position. The question has to be, does Diogo Silva have anything left in these last couple of laps to make that qualifying spot, or will he have to do another week's worth of running to get himself into those final 5 spots to make it into the last qualifier and the final next week at Silverstone National?
Yeah, Diogo Silva has been noted as being off circuit, so he ran wide somewhere, and he's actually lost a bit of ground on this last lap to Chiappini and Merlos. Chiappini also took a huge amount of curb, so that was going through the village section of turns, unsettled the car massively and had to back out of it. So it was looking very, very fiery, kind of Bootaloo-esque, as we're now coming up to the last lap, but he wasn't able to make a move and stays in 5th position, which is fine for the moment.
I think, including this lap to go, possibly have, I think, 3 laps to go, including the one we're on. I'll tell you what, Kevin Ryan's lead, even though these 3 are pretty much secure, I don't think Kasdorp's going to sit here for 2nd place. I think he wants the bragging rights and he wants the victory, if it's a feasible, and if he can pull off a clean enough move to get it done. They head down the hangar straight back towards Stowe. The gap across the line, when they came across the line when I saw it, was under half a second, and Kasdorp are looking a little bit more confident than Ryan's at the moment. Honzik is sort of fallen away a little bit here and possibly could be out of it, unless he's just hanging back and waiting for an opportunity. But Kasdorp's car seems to be just a little bit tighter and tidier through the corners. He's taking a lot of curb as he continues to pursue the Irishman Kevin Ryan. They come onto the pit straight now. I think we've got, yeah, 2 more laps to go, including the one we're starting now. We've got 1 minute 20 on the clock now, and the lap is about 1 minute 1, 1 minute 2. So 2 more laps to go then, and 2 more laps for Kevin Ryan to hold on, unless Yuri Kasdorp can feasibly, that's the key word, feasibly, make a move for the lead and go into the finals with the bragging rights of having won round 3.
Well, remember I just told you that Chiappini took a massive chunk of curb coming into the link section of turns. Well, because the race director on track limits is completely virtual, the computer has decided that was a cut, so he is in a very dangerous position now. If he causes any more problems, or maybe he's done 3 already, I don't quite know how many he's got. You get 3 before you get a penalty, but he took a massive cut in the link section. It didn't benefit him. It was certainly a mistake. The car bumbled underneath him, but race direction saw it and have noted it. So he needs to be very, very careful now. He needs to be super, super clean, because there's no threat from behind. Diogo Silva has dropped off the back of that little battle, so he is in a good position. He just needs to keep that car, all 4 wheels, on the track.
Yes, indeed. Speaking of keeping it on the track, we're now on to the last lap of this race, and Kevin Ryan's now just got 1 more tour of the international circuit to hold on. and to do his country proud. They've got a yellow flag in sector 1 very briefly. Big slide from Kevin Ryan. You can tell he's pushing. He's not done just yet. He's still got probably, what, another 3 or 4 more corners to go until he's got that checkered flag. He's not relaxing one iota as he heads out of Beckett's onto the hangar straight for the final time.
And the yellow flag was for Kirill Burkov, who's now bringing his car into pit lane. I think he had a spin. I think it was in the second sector, or it was coming into the second sector at Beckett's. Either way, Burkov is now from Russia in the pit lane. I see the little marshal waving the checkered flag. So this is the last lap then.
It is indeed. And as they come into the complex of the final time, again, it's going to be another lights to flag victory for these guys as they come out of the final couple of corners. We had Rudy Van Buren, we had Jeffrey Rietveld, and now Kevin Ryan will head out of the final corner and will take the checkered flag to win the 3rd round of McLaren's World's Fastest Gamer, with Yuri Kazdorp in 2nd place, and Jaroslav Honzik will complete the podium in 3rd. And then the final 2 positions in the top 5 qualifiers will go to Miguel Moreles and Davide Chiappini in 4th and 5th. That means that the first of the non-qualifiers, Diogo Silva, best of the rest, in 6th. He will have to come back next week and try and get himself qualified for the top 5 for the time trials for the final, to be one of the 5 wildcards. And then looking through the rest of the order, Zbigniew Ciara, brilliant run for him in 7th place. Then we've got Pierre Pive in 8th, Jan van der Heide in 9th, and Kirill Birokov, well, he was shown his 10th, but he won't be, I don't think. So that 10th position, I think, actually finished in the pit lane by the looks of things. So we'll give you the overall run in a few moments' time. But let's just have a look and see our final few positions as they come across the line. So to confirm the result, it's Kevin Ryan who wins, from Yuri Kazdorp in 2nd place, and Jaroslav Honzik, Miguel Moreles and Davide Chiappini in 5th. Then Diogo Silva finishes 6th ahead of Zbigniew Ciara, Peyu Pif, Jan van der Heide and Kirill Birokov are actually still classified 10th, even though he retired with suspension problems. Then Jimmy Nisula in 11th place, Olli Patel down in 12th. I'm very disappointed with that. He'll have to come back next week to prove himself. And then it's Brewer, Burlak, Masculi, Francesconi, Ballesta and Moya, and Williams running up with 19 cars. Brilliant racing, and here is Ben with the top 5.
What a race. One of the most exciting e-races that certainly I've ever spoken about, and that was far the better race of the 3 qualifiers we've had so far. Not quite as dominating performance as we've seen in the first 2 rounds, but Kevin did manage to do lights to flag, with Yuri Kazdorp giving him hassle all the way through. And a massive, massive jump for Yuri. He was the last of the qualifiers, and he managed to qualify into next week's final with a 2nd spot here. Jaroslav Honzik has been trying for a few weeks now in 3rd, Miguel Mielos in 4th, and David Chiappioni coming in first week, bang, 5th position, and we'll see him next week as well. And what we're going to try and do is going to try and speak to our top 3 drivers as soon as possible. Fantastic accessibility, of course, as we can just simply link up around the world and have a good chat with them to find out exactly what is going on through the heads of those drivers. And Scott is going to join us on the sofa as well. We're just going to take a quick breather before we speak to Jaroslav Honzik first. Can I ask you to shift a bit, not because you smell, but just, you know, director wants to make sure everything looks as pretty as possible. And how about it? We've got a McLaren sitting in front of us. Not very often you get to chat in front of a Formula 1 McLaren car. This is a proper car as well. Yeah, this is chassis 3 from last year, but I believe possibly on the side of it says Stoffel Van Dorn. So possibly it could be Stoffel's, of course. He didn't do too bad, of course, in today's Grand Prix in Spa. Of course, kind of a bit of a tough one for Fernando Alonso. We won't spoil the results if you haven't seen them, of course. But I haven't. You haven't, so I won't spoil what happened. But Van Dorn managed to make it to the finish. I think all on a good day's work so far, it seems, for McLaren. Yeah, and the end goal for all of these drivers that we've seen this evening is that contract with the McLaren Formula 1 team, a year's contract as the sim driver, something that Oliver Turvey already does, Lando Norris already does. They actually, somebody told me the other day, they have 2 simulators at McLaren, one that's relatively basic, one kind of a driver can jump in whenever they like, and then one that they use during the race weekend. So if you're unsure about what they use a simulator for, during the race weekend here that we've had at Spa, there will be a driver in the simulator all the way through the weekend back at Woking, simulating different setups, different engine max, differential settings, loads of different things, running those through, and anything that works on the simulator will then be relayed back to Spa and tried out on the real car. And if the simulator's good, it should benefit the car. An amazing thing that, you know, even 5-10 years ago, we would not have had that. And now these massive mission controls back at base, whether it be just over to Force India here, or, I mean, McLaren's is another world. It's proper mission control, spaceship styly. But just amazing thing for these guys to be involved with if they win next week's final. Let's have a chat with our third place driver, Jaroslav Honzik. Been trying for a couple of weeks, Jaroslav, and you must be very happy with third position this week on the Silverstone International Circuit.
Yes, finally, I'm really happy. It was a great race and great performance. And yeah, after previous race, I was just looking at my performance and just avoiding any mistakes. And I'm really happy with the third place.
Have you been developing your setup and your car, or is this something in the driving that's improved, or is just things have come together this week?
Well, probably things that came together this week, because I used probably most of my setup from Zandvoort, and it was really working really well. And I was just trying to hit my laps in the qualifying, because qualifying is the most important in these races, and everything worked really well for me.
Fantastic, and great to be able to sit behind those top two and be involved in that battle. Presumably you weren't tempted to make a diving move at any moment?
Well, one time I thought I am a little faster than the second guy, but then I changed my mind a little bit because I did a little mistake in the first corner, and first two corners were really like tight, really slippery, and I just decided that when we move away from the fourth guy, I will just keep my pace and see if the guys in front of me do any mistakes. They didn't, so we just keep our times, our distance, and everyone was thinking really well in the end.
A racing driver with a head. That's what I like.
Yep.
No hot-headedness. Fantastic. Well done, Jaroslav. Congratulations, and we look forward to seeing your performance next week. Silverstone National Circuit. There'll be touring cars out there, but anyway, we look forward to seeing you. Thanks very much.
Thank you, guys. See you next week.
All the way from Prague, Czechoslovakia. I love this. This is what's great about e-racing, is bringing all these people from all the way around the world. We started off today with a Brazilian driver who would have been having lunch. Most of these guys are in Europe, so they're at least dinner time, but fantastic to have people around the world coming together in, you call it a server, I think of it as a room, a virtual room, and then racing and entertaining us so much today.
Yeah, I think you're right. You could definitely call it a room in some cases, but yeah, absolutely. It just shows how talented some of the sim racers are. It's not just here in the UK, of course. They're looking for somebody all over the world, effectively, and of course, it just shows that, you know, Europe, even some of the more slightly obscure countries where don't have a massive motorsport following, like Croatia or Czech Republic, they have some very talented sim racers out there, of course, and now they're coming to the forefront in competitions like this and big sim racing leagues around Europe and around the world.
Absolutely. Some of them you have to travel to, but this makes it so accessible for drivers. You know, Formula One, motorsport in general is so expensive to just begin. You know, going down to your local kart track doesn't cut it anymore, and if you do that, you still need tens and tens of thousands of pounds to start up. In sim racing, a couple of thousand would help you get a decent simulator and decent steering wheel, but that's about it, right?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, you can go sim racing for less than that. You can put a decent PC for about, what, £400 or £500. You can pick up a console, either a PlayStation 4 or an Xbox One, and go and race on many of the sims and racing games that are there. But, you know, you've got the sim racing communities, as far as Indonesia, I know, go that far in terms of sim racing there. And to be fair, they put on some pretty good racing from what I've seen. So it really is worldwide, and it's only getting bigger. Yeah,
and the #1 country in the world for e-sports generally is South Korea.
Yes.
Because they don't really have a sports culture elsewhere. A culture that's been doing incredibly well in our rFactor 2 competition so far. We've got two Dutch winners, and today we had a Dutch second place. Yuri Kasdorp, nice to have you along with us, Yuri. We haven't seen you in the first 2 weeks, so you bang it straight into second place. There, Yuri.
He did so well, he can't even speak.
He's so shocked with himself. Yuri, you there? Two Dutch winners the last 2 weeks, and you come in second, please.
Yeah, not too bad. Much better than I expected. I expected to watch the race on live stream tonight.
So yeah, well, absolutely. The first 2 weeks, were you watching, or did you try to qualify?
I tried to qualify, but I'm not much of a qualified person myself, and I struggled a bit trying to get my sectors together in the first couple of weeks. I think I placed 30th and somewhere near 30th second week as well. And
so the qualifying final happens next week on the Silverstone National Circuit. Only 3 corners on that, so that's going to suit you very well.
I don't know, I like this track, but I think for the first week I lost my time in Megas and Beckett's, and the next track doesn't have that either, so I think I'll be all right.
Absolutely, not the most complex circuits in the world, Silverstone National Circuit. Also, very impressive, Scott, that you were really hassling Kevin Ryan.
Yeah, I got close a couple times, but I didn't really want to get too close because I saw, well, P3 was close behind me, and then there was quite a gap to P4. So I wanted to just keep the gap to the front and to the back a bit even. I tried to get a bit closer once. I got to within half a second, but then Dirty Air took over, slided a bit, and I just shot back a bit again.
And where was the pace change from your qualifying? You were the, I hate to say it, the last of our qualifiers in 20th position, and you come in P2. Where did you find that, that margin, that gap over the last couple of days?
Well, I didn't find anything. I got my Oculus this week, and then for fun, I tried to qualify with the Oculus for the first time. So the first couple of days that I got the Oculus, I just did a couple laps with this, and I guess I got a bit more used to it. And now today, I instantly was 2/10 quicker than I was last week.
Amazing.
And then the race went well as well.
That's an amazing, interesting fact. Thank you very much. Look forward to seeing you next week on the Silverstone National Circuit. Congratulations, Yuri.
Well done, Yuri.
Thank you.
Scott, that's really interesting. He bought himself a new Oculus.
Yep.
Oculus is the virtual goggles.
Yes.
And that gave him 0.2 of a second outright.
Do you know what, it's crazy because those sort of VR headsets, I've tried one in a sim before, and it's crazy how it changes your perception for the better, because it gives you such a sensation that effectively it even sort of makes you more aware in terms of where you actually have to look when you're driving in corners. Even if you're driving your own road car, I think it's probably going to look a bit further down the road now. It does that sort of thing. So, because basically it does generally just simulates effectively where you'd be looking if you're in that real race car, sat in the seat yourself. Effectively, it simulates if you're going to go there. So that's going to be pretty key for him if he can learn that. Of course, he seems to have learned it pretty quickly, and now he's going forwards to the national circuit. He should get even quicker.
I wonder whether, if you go to something like iZone or those places that do simulator sort of tuition, they have a little laser line, and
yes,
they point to where you should be looking. It's very difficult, especially on a simulator where you are looking at a screen, to actually be able to look so far ahead. And I wonder whether the Oculus actually allows you to do that, like you're saying, adjust your vision a little bit.
I think it does, because like I said, because it basically, that sort of VR, it simulates effectively exactly what you'd be seeing and where you'd be looking if you're sat in the real race car itself. So if you're in a single seater or in, you know, the McLaren like you're in here as well, you would effectively be sat in there and adjusting all his field of view and everything you could see. Effectively, he'd be sat there and thinking, this is exactly what I would see if I was on the track at Silverstone International for real in this GT car.
And it paints a nice picture of the driver, maybe at home, maybe in an office. Some of these drivers do actually go to a facility, which is a group of people and a team to do their sim racing and to get the best equipment, whether it be the Logitech steering wheel and pedals or other brands. You know, those things are going to improve your performance like an upgrade of a Honda engine would improve the performance of a McLaren. Yeah,
potentially. Yeah, it's a key thing in terms of being able to improve like that, and it's kind of going to the sort of centres and getting the tuition you've got, places like iZone and base performance simulators, you know, that sort of professional tuition. And when people are now relying more and more on using simulators to learn circuits and to get better in terms of their own driving ability, when going simply testing, even for like, you know, grassroots club races can cost, you know, a couple of £100 for a session to go somewhere like Brands Hatch or Silverstone or Snetterton. You know, if you can learn the circuit in a sim, of course, yes, it doesn't give you the exact feeling in terms of how things are, but at least it'll give you some kind of a sensation in terms of lines, braking points, turning points, etc. It gives you a feel of exactly how you need to drive the circuit and a feel of exactly where you are and which way it goes.
Well, we've been desperately trying to get in contact with Kevin Ryan, who is our winner from Ireland, and his microphone is a little bit bust. I think it's kind of working, but our soundy is only the very best microphones allow to get past him. So sadly, we do not have Kevin Ryan to talk to, which means we can talk to the race director and race steward. Come on, Ed and Miguel. This is the fun bit where we basically dissect the whole of the race with these guys, and they've been hard at work. You're supposed to be this side, but it doesn't matter. Ed, you can come and sit beside me. Sit on the pink pillow. And we are going to first look at, where am I looking? I'm looking there, at the turn 1 accident. Obviously, one of the difficult problems we have is we don't get the replays, and when we have a 5-car accident, we really do need a replay. So let's have a look at the start of the race. Race director, you kept it very nice and tidy before the start.
Yeah, no, I mean, I was just talking to Kevin. Yeah,
the microphone worked for you then?
No, he was listening to me.
Okay.
But he was doing what I said, and he was controlling the pace very nicely, backed them up through here. Yeah, it was. I mean, it looked like a perfect race start, and then unfortunately it all kind of unwound. Yeah, I mean, there was a sort of, we were touch and go as to whether there would be a restart or not, but we kind of made the decision that enough cars carried on, basically.
Oh, now we just cut away at just the wrong moment there, because I wanted to know exactly how we ended up with 5 cars facing the wrong way. Miguel, you ended up giving a penalty to David Williams for that contact, I believe. Yes, so what did you see? We'll try and re-cue that, see if we can
David was on the inside, trying to overtake, but he didn't have the car halfway through it. It was sideways, just with the front nose on the rear, not even on the rear wheels. And then obviously as they go along, they slightly touch him. He's hard on the brakes as well, with the car already sideways. So this was on the car in front, which was Honzik's car. Starts to go into a drift. I don't know how we managed to get it, especially into our. I think if it was on real life, that would be very, very difficult. At least he will run wide. We managed to get it, and then after that, you can see all of that coming afterwards. And also Miguel Ballester turned into a car as well, so he also had a penalty. So that's why all of those cars kind of
ended up in bits.
Yeah.
We think we've got Kevin Ryan. I really want to talk to Kevin to congratulate him on a lights to flag victory. So Kevin, are you there now?
Yeah, I'm here. Hi, can you hear me?
Great, yeah, your microphone's working very well, Kevin.
Okay.
Fastest man throughout time trials, fastest man in qualifying, fastest man in Superpole. But that wasn't a dominating victory. Did you kind of pace yourself throughout that race?
It was actually kind of tricky because, like, the car just didn't feel like it felt in any of my race tests, and like there wasn't much grip at the front or the rear, and I was just like, yeah, I just had to pace myself really and just make sure I kind of kept the guys behind.
You must be absolutely ecstatic to not only qualify, but to qualify with such a strong performance on a shorter circuit. Okay, we don't use any of the bits in the national circuit next week from this week, but you're feeling confident for next week, looking at the competition from the previous 2 weeks?
Yeah, it feels really positive for next week because this track was it was a short technical track on Silverstone, and next week's the same thing. So who knows, maybe it'll go good.
And Kevin, just paint a picture of where our race winner is this evening, sitting, shoes on, shoes off. What's your setup?
Well, it's shoes off. I have my kind of rig is like squeezed between 2 beds, and it's just like have triple screens, and so it's a bit tight, but no, it all works.
Very good. Well, congratulations. Absolutely wonderful victory, and look forward to seeing what you can do against those Dutchmen next week, Kevin. Thanks very much for talking to us.
Okay, thanks. Bye.
Now, what are we watching here? That is Kevin Ryan, isn't doing a nice job leading the field, but he said the car didn't feel as it used to in all the race simulations. Why would that be, Scott?
It might be possibly due to maybe a change in possibly rubber, because of course depending on how many cars you've got on track, it could be something to do with maybe the amount of rubber on the track as well. So maybe, of course, he was running on a circuit which was particularly green. That means, of course, there wasn't too much rubber on the circuit, but because there was, 18 odd cars sort of lapping the circuit in qualifying, in Superpole, in practice, and in the race, it might have been the potential the circuit maybe had more rubber than he was used to on the setup. So because of that, it wasn't performing at the same rate and maybe oversteering a bit too much because there was literally too much grip in the car.
Well, he still won. Good job from Kevin Ryan. I want to go back to the start again because we had the outside view of that first lap accident, a very eloquent description from Miguel of what he saw, but we do have an onboard from Olli Pakala. He was involved in the accident, a man that we really expected to see right at the sharp end, and it would be it's such a shame not to have Olli in the top 5 when, on days he can be as fast as Bono Houston. Houston's already qualified without even needing to come through any of this.
Well, exactly. No, I mean, he was definitely one of the people, and Williams as well. it's not like we can have favourites, but yeah, I expected Williams to be up there because he's another very, very quick guy in a big team, Coanda. So yeah, you have a Coanda guy and a Team Redline guy, and neither of them made it through this round.
So there are guys, Scott, who are sitting in their bedrooms on their own, and there are others who are in bigger teams. Here is the onboard from Olli Perkala. So he's right in the middle of the pack. He gets involved in the accident. And just talk us through it.
Yeah, so they're now sort of heading up towards turn one. He's sort of boxed in as he comes in, and look at that, that was contact with, I think that was possibly, that was Ballester. So because of that, heading through it, effectively he was almost a passenger in that, because going towards Abbey Corner, his way was completely blocked. He was boxed in by 2 or 3 cars, and Ballester looked as though he went to turn towards the apex, didn't anticipate that Ollie was that far alongside, and because of that, the pair made contact, and I think personally he was an instant bystander in that.
That's a classic Silverstone first corner though, isn't it?
I think you know, you also have to take into account that their tyres may have cooled a little bit more than they might have anticipated, because you know they've been backed up a little bit, and you know that looked a little bit like the he didn't quite anticipate the adhesion loss, you know, on the cold tyres through the first corner, so bam. Yeah. I mean that's what I put it down to, but yeah, it's definitely was avoidable. So.
We had a big, we saw in the Super Pole session that tyre temps was a big problem. Only one lap, only a short lap to get the tyre temps up. So presumably on a really slow warming up lap like we saw, tyre temps are going to be really cold going into Abbey for the first time.
Yes, especially with the first lap being also, everybody was well, quite slowly with don't warm up the tires as well, because we want to keep the pack all together. So that wouldn't help as well. Now, Abbey is a very fast corner. It's not it doesn't have it has a very gentle braking into it. You don't want to brake too hard, and people think they might be able to overtake, but it's a very tricky corner, so you need to be very, very patient. And it's not the first time that I see an accident, even on real life, on the start of a race in here. Absolutely.
Let's continue with the tales and tribulations of David Williams, because last week he had problems. He didn't get out when he should have got out for the start of the race. So that was a kind of a battle back through the field. He didn't make it to the top 5. In the top 5 in qualifying, looking good. Then you decided to give him a drive-through penalty, but it got even worse than that.
Well,
drive-through penalty was obviously what you believe to be correct. That's absolutely fine. But when he took the drive-through penalty,
and then he had another penalty.
Yeah, exactly. We think that he sped in the pit lane. This is again, you know, we have two ways. There are 2 ways of a driver getting a penalty. One is by a live steward like Miguel, and the other one is that the game automatically gives it for cutting or speeding in the pit lane or something like that. And what I mean, I know that Dave is not that familiar with rFactor 2. He's more of an iRacing guy. So I mean, he was. I spoke to him briefly before the race. He said this was maybe his 2nd ever race, the first being last week in rFactor 2. So what I think is that he didn't quite notice his 2nd penalty come up for speeding the pit lane, and perhaps he didn't do a few coming into the pits sort of tests before the race just to see exactly where the line is. You know, these things are important, especially for these rounds, but I suppose he didn't think he'd have to come around the pit lane. So.
Well, you know, you have to plan with these things. I know that real racing drivers go and have a look at where the various runoff areas are and how they can get out of gravel traps and stuff like that, just in the eventuality. And Schumacher was one of those who was very, very good at, you'd see him on a track walk going off into the gravel trap and seeing if there's a tarmac area behind, just in case if he went through that gravel, he could continue, get the car straightened up and aim for the barrier so he could get out of the gravel. Because if you start turning on gravel, then you bog down. We're getting bogged down in something I don't need to talk about. Let's talk about the race. Outside the top 5, epic battles.
Yes, a good battle between Per Pief and Daniel Brewer in the mix as well. Lots of battles towards the end of the top 10, and their group and their sort of the cars they're around all the time, they provided constant entertainment all the way throughout.
Yeah, and much more entertainment than we've seen at Zandvoort and Silverstone Grand Prix circuit. Are we going to see even, well, we are going to see even more at the Silverstone National, aren't we?
Well, as you said, it's 3 or 4 corners. Basically, the carambolage down in towards Brooklands is going to be absolutely epic in terms of the cars going 2 or 3 wide, because we saw on the Grand Prix circuit, there's about 2 or 3 different lines you can take in there, and none of them are incorrect.
Yeah, exactly. Let's have a look at what the battle between Pief and Brewer ended up in, because they were having a wonderful battle, but sadly it ended in a bit of disaster. This is them coming into Stowe. Well, that actually is Brewer ahead of Peeve, quite well ahead of Peeve. Oh, he runs super wide. Oh, okay. So that is why suddenly the gap diminished. Peeve thought, right, I'm going to have the down the inside, dives down the inside. Brewer didn't know he was there, and the two collected each other, and Paulo Moura, who was already involved in one accident, got involved in the second one as well. Fault blame there, Miguel?
Well, I think it was a bit misjudging. So basically, he came out badly from Stowe. He lost a bit of time, and then the car behind thought that he might be able to overtake. But the problem is, he was not even. He was already committed, but he was not even. He was already committed to overtake. But they didn't even. They were through the braking zone, but he was not with the front wheels on the back wheels of the car. While the car in front started to turn, and then obviously because of the difference of speed, I think he braked a bit too late, and then caused a bit of the contact as well. But it's a bit hard to me to see all of it because of I don't have all the information. It might be something going wrong with the car in front, but to me it seemed like it was a bit of a lunge on that overtake.
Yeah.
Could be cause of a bit of a misjudgment.
And Paulo Peeve was definitely the slower of the two. We saw him really backing up a whole queue of cars. So when Brewer had got past, he really wanted to scarper, and sadly made that little error into Stowe. So eventually, I think we lost Brewer. He DNF'd. Peeve continued, but way down the field. So they still have an opportunity, Scott, to come next week. And there are 5 spaces available to get into next week's race. Log on now, the time trial is open for the Silverstone National Circuit. There are 5 spots available, and you'll be going up against the 15 that have qualified over the last 3 weeks. Looking, Scott, at who we've seen so far, of the winners, of the Dutchmen from week 1 to week 3, who are your favourites to go and become the winner of this rFactor 2 competition?
I think at the moment, as I said at the top of the programme, I think it's probably going to be me. I think Kevin Ryan will be in there or thereabouts, but ultimately I think it's going to be a grudge match between the two Dutchmen. I think it's going to be Rietveld versus Van Buren at the front, because of course both of them have won their races pretty much, not at a canter, but by about a 3 or 4 or 5 second gap. So both of them know how to lead the race from the front with quite a gap. I think if the two of them can match each other for pace, we could be on for hopefully a nice Titanic battle all the way through the half-an-hour encounter.
Ed?
Actually,
as race director, you
look on that face.
Yeah, exactly. No, I can't. I mean, it's not very good form, is it? Well, that said, I think probably Rietveld has the edge. I'd say. I think he was just that little bit more dominant at Zandvoort. And he showed before, he couldn't make the first round, I don't think, but he showed his pace by being right at the top at that as well. So I think, you know, he took the clean sweep, didn't he, at Zandvoort? He just blasted it all. So I think he's a pretty tough competitor.
Miguel, there's a couple of Portuguese in there. Can you put money on him?
A couple. I think all the top 5, even in quali, the gap between them is marginal. And then if in one track suits, one of them are top and the other are bottom, and is constantly changing. And so basically, if the track is different, it might suit one, or it might the ones that you think will be the favorite. The track might not suit him. You might not get a good setup for that track, and then he might struggle. So.
And the Silverstone National Circuit is 3.5 corners long. It's going to be about a 50-second lap. It's going to be absolutely frenetic, door banging, and you guys are going to have a lot of work to do, no doubt about it.
If this round is anything to go by, I mean, you know, we had our work cut out for us today. You know, you would think it's very strange how this works, because you come from a track like Zandvoort, tight, twisty, it's bumpy, you know, you've got a lot of stuff that the driver has to do all the time. They were so careful, and they drove like, you know, angels.
Absolutely.
When they get a big wide track that's flat, they just hammer each other. So, you know.
They take liberties is what they do.
Well, there's more and more desperation coming into qualifying for the rFactor 2 competition. 5 more places available for next week. We've already got 15 qualifiers. Only 1 winner will go towards the McLaren's fastest gamer final in November. But there are other opportunities and other platforms for qualification as well, including in September, iRacing. And the iRacing competition takes place throughout September in Formula One McLarens as well. Expect to see the world's best iRacing gamers involved in that, and many from the rFactor 2 competition that may not have got through here taking place in that competition. And there's plenty of other platforms as well that you can choose from. Make sure you come onto our website, the WF Gamer, on Twitter and Facebook, and we will see you next week, 7 days time. Make sure you tune in at 8:30 local time here at Silverstone for the final of the rFactor 2 competition around the Silverstone National Circuit. As we said, it's tight, it's twisty, it's going to be absolutely mega racing, and I can't wait for it. Get qualifying if you want to join it, and we'll see you next week.